bush. My sound, run the dance hall, run the dance movement, make your gal ball. Run the dance hall, sound systems on the brawl, running the dance hall, run the dance hall, run the dance. My sound, run the dance hall, run the dance movement, make your gal ball. Run the dance hall, sound systems on the brawl, running the dance hall, run the dance hall, run the dance. You ain't knocking if you don't have a dollar. Girls backtrack, so don't even holler. Cause nowadays it's all about the dollar. On the house of Cadillac, pockets must stack proper. So it boils down to the dollar. That makes the world move. Better follow, sing, make money, money scream louder. I got my own hard times, ask me for $1. Every day I work harder and harder. Don't wanna see my wife and picking get mager. Morning blessings as I rise to jogger. Your baby boy's grown now. Love your mama, I'm on the radio, log on, we make $1. Plus that's the name spend, she spend a lot of green. My team, better remember, Belize movements, for Scorpio $1. My sound, run the dance hall, run the dance movement, make your gal ball. Run the dance hall, sound systems on the brawl, running the dance hall, run the dance hall, run the dance. My sound, run the dance hall, run the dance movement, make your gal ball. Run the dance hall, sound systems on the brawl, running the dance hall, run the dance hall, run the dance. Selection today, turn out discos, surround systems, sexy ladies want gold. Nothing for the night, they wanna exercise their toes. Let the mood is right, let the rhythm flow. Oh, hip hop, soul, calypso. Oh, you didn't know Thursday night radio. Request any song, just call upon the show. Run the dance hall, about time we blow. Danny Rippers might make the song show. Pauline wine, she goes down low. Intoxicating, you know, ran away, so like ho. And until it's over, everybody go home. Organize another gig. I want more. Original Scorpion sound lets you know. Throw your hands up, side to side, hey ho. Release movements, dollar with Scorpio. My sound, run the dance hall, run the dance movement, make your gal ball. Run the dance hall, sound systems on the brawl, running the dance hall, run the dance hall, run the dance. My sound, run the dance hall,
Rapping.
run the dance movement, make your gal ball. Run the dance hall,
What up, what up, what up?
sound systems on the brawl, running the dance hall.
Your
Run the
time now.
dance hall, run the dance.
Mr. Joey,
Can you hear me?
what's up? Make I take out this really mess up. Greetings, we live already, you know. We didn't pay a boy on the phone, the boy right now, he say last leave it, you know, ego.
But are you
Hey, go
hearing
on.
me?
Talk to me, greetings. Welcome to the show.
Are you
Yeah,
hearing
Mr.
me?
Joey, we wait for him. The Mike and Mr. Greg, no?
My
Are
sound,
you
run the
hearing
dance
me?
hall, run the dance movement,
Hold
make
on,
your
make I take
gal
out the
ball.
music.
Run the dance hall, sound.
Greetings.
Are you hearing me, Clinton?
Did you hear me now? Yeah, they hear you good, man.
Oh, good, good. I hear
Yeah,
you.
man, I hear you good, man. I hear you good.
All right, good, good. I'm the
Yeah,
one
just want to
that.
say good evening, you know, to everybody.
That's fine. Good evening.
You know. Them boy, they come directly. Huh?
I'm going to leave problem with the microphone.
Oh, no, but I hear you good now. Clean, boy.
Good, all right.
Yeah, clean. Nice and clean. Yeah.
Okay.
So how things down there?
Well, boy, right down here, well, the weather is a little overcast right now, a little slight north.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that,
Mm-hmm.
we're going through the usual challenges.
Yeah. You have to face it with a chin
Yeah.
up, they say.
But there has been I would see it as kind of unprecedented increase in crimes. No?
What?
Yeah, I'm noticing that every week now we're getting deaths. Some of them unexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
Some seems to be tied to. In this case, they had a case up in the north with the cartel now.
Okay,
The
yeah.
cartel have been
Yeah.
found evidence of operation up there.
Yeah, well, I figure the cartel is dealing the thing for a long time from before, from earlier, because Belize always was a conduit, you know. A lot of people never really realized that. Then, but let me run through the back a long time, you know. So,
Well, you know, that is very true, you know, Clinton. I was in the Dominican Republic at a meeting, and at that side table, meeting with the DA. They warned us at the time, that's pretty far back, that the route where they used to use passing through Jamaica, that the US will be coming down pretty hard because they could more stop them there because of the waters. He said, but what they want to do, it is evident that once they put forces there, they want to begin to move on the mainland.
yeah.
And that Belize will become highly vulnerable now.
Yeah, because it's a conduit.
That's right. It is.
Yeah, it's a way up, you know. But not only not only the cartel. I mean, you could see the influx of the immigrants too that are way up to north, you know.
Exactly.
So believe. But I always tell, I think we'll get into this in the next 2 weeks more. But I always say Belize is not only Central America to North and South America. Belize is centrifugal in a lot of ways. Meaning even before the Ice Age and so, when the world was together as historians like say, if you check the longitude and latitude of Belize, it's center. Belize is a very important place, man. And the reason why they call it the jewel, you know. But I think people are using it to their advantage, though, man.
No, well, I fully agree with you. There's so much strategic values, you know.
Yeah.
Economically,
Yeah.
politically.
Yeah.
And we are also like a bridge because we bring some regions together.
Yeah, no, a bridge. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Civilization, we have Central America.
Yeah.
If you look
You
at
are the only one that talk English between the Anglais and English, the one of we mean free language, you know what I mean? So yeah, add that to the list too.
It's a very large market from Panama right down.
Yeah, all
right
the way
down here to
through.
the east and the Caribbean. You have 135 million people.
Wow, yeah, a huge demographic that.
That's
They
right.
look at it as income, you know. The people don't count people as people, you know. They count them as how they could use them to deal with certain things. And if the cartel deal with the thing, the cartel deal with the thing long time.
Yeah, that's part of the capitalism. But I think those who had started the Caribbean movement, you know, in the region, had a vision that one day they would want to expand out and join up the Caribbean region with Central America.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that had come up before. Yeah.
Yeah. You look like you are very much up to date on these things, Clinton.
No, but I listen to y'all. How you mean if I'm updated every week? I listen to you. So and Mr. Morrison free chairman. I listen to him every week. You know that I get my information straight from the source. You see what I say? And I'm very appreciative of that. So yeah, man, I'm very informative. We talk about you guys is very informative too. You are informed all the time. I know. You know what I mean? I listen to you guys. That's where I get my information from. So you think?
Well, we all get from each other.
I agree.
They say that the circle of knowledge is surrounded by a circle of ignorance.
Correct. Yeah. You have to. Yeah.
And as the circle of knowledge widens, the outer circle widens.
You dig it, yeah, correct. You're disbanding, yeah, you keep them wide, stay wide, yeah.
Together we can widen the circle of knowledge.
Yeah, they can penetrate certain positive movements, man. They hard for them because it becomes difficult because the army they get stronger as we go along, you know. Positivity and win over, man. And the truth too. I think the truth win over too. I think like I like when you say when somebody the episodes of the time about facts. When they say, well, no, you have to stop that assumption and that presumption and these things. You have to come with facts to back your argument. You dig what I'm saying? If you have facts to back your argument, they make the argument more believable. You dig?
Right, and more useful, guys.
Yeah, more useful too. Correct. Yeah.
If it is not on facts, then say so, and then make me know if it is speculation,
intuition. Yeah. How you feel, because anybody can have an opinion. Yeah. But if it derives from facts, then they make it, like I said, it make it more useful, more pro, you know.
That's right. One is from knowledge and
knowledge is king, man. Yeah, knowledge is king, man. It left up to the individual to decipher all because the information they come fast now. You saw the information they come.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So you left up to we know for decipher what and what. And that doesn't sound Indian right and wrong thing, because I think all man, everybody wants to pass a certain fire. Baby, you know what and what, you know. I mean, you know fire and burn, you know this and that. It becomes a thing where we like when you grow up now, you have to decipher what part you want to take. If you want to be an advocate, if you just want to be on some of the movements and them, but it depends.
Right. Challenging world, boy. Very challenging world, no?
Yeah, but I think some of the things got to do. A lot of it got to do with the political thing too, man. People don't like talk about it and no one talk about politics, but I think a lot of it have to do because they're making certain rules and laws and regulations, and some of it is status quo because if it changes, then be beneficial to someone else. So No matter how you want to change somebody, the people getting the power no want to change it.
Now, politics must be a part of us. It's an inherent part of us because
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
of it that we are political animals. That's no doubt.
Okay.
Yeah. Not in the
Okay.
degrading sense, in the sense that we have to socialize, we have to live together.
Yeah.
And when we move from a state of nature into the state of our society, it was to expand with freedoms and to better protect them.
Yeah.
To be together, to make life better for us. So that's the reality of the human being.
Okay.
Thank you, my brother.
All right. Boy.
All right, boy. You all right?
Good evening. What's going on? We had a blackout in this area.
Okay.
Interesting enough, only Givenat Street got blackout.
Yes.
Apparently, a transformer went bad and BL finally came out and figured it out. So we have to know my clock have to reset, computer have to reset.
Correct.
My brains have to reset.
Correct. You have to recalibrate. I'm
going to need some patience. So I want to take care of Joe for me. Keep him off of me back for a minute.
Yeah.
Good evening, folks. G Mike in the house with you. Joe, you're there. Yeah. Oh, your guest not show up yet.
No, I so pets I don't really say anything either, but win, lose or draw, we there.
Yeah. Greg will not show up yet either.
No, neither. We chat earlier, you checked me earlier, but they not show up yet either.
Gregory, make arrangements with the fellow to come in?
No.
Okay.
It was me.
Okay. All right.
But a while back I spoke to him and see if he wanted, you know what I mean? But that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I say,
And I'm communicating. I was communicating with the leader of the opposition today. I'm going to try invite her on again now. Because he was on the show this morning. And Krem, I believe, Love. Did you hear him, Joe?
Yeah.
Ernesto.
Yeah, it was Love FM.
Ernesto was no match for the fella. He's glib, He can talk. I found that every time Ernesto tried asking a question, he had a different course to take, and he didn't know how to pull him back in. So, but what we under the politicians are a wily bunch. Joe would know that. So I take a man like Joe for dealing them guys, no? We had a nice chat this morning, Joe, me and Maito, over there at our usual rendezvous spot. Where you going on, your Bali? Budna, man. We're going on that fella, right?
I was watching the news a while ago, and he did appear there, but I quite frankly don't know much about him.
Why that man has been in and out of the news for the past 20-odd years with the same type of behavior. Apparently, and there's sometimes when you hear stories like that, you get part of the story. This boy brought the whole thing to the forefront. How him and he negotiate with the next boy for do the same kind of stuff. The next boy never want to pay enough, so he gone. And then he get this next Lee boy, and the next belly get jealous or something. This boy look like he got it going on, man. But this boy has been in fake one kidnapping Guatemala one time, and in fact, he was in jail in Guatemala and escaped from jail in Guatemala and came to Belize, and they didn't extradite him, no? So he's been guilty of behavior, and if the child is a minor, then that is against the law. I don't know how they can find out. I don't know. Did they say it on the news whether the child was a minor that got killed?
At the time, they seem not to have been sure because I remember the commissioner said he's 16 or over. But I don't know if they have confirmed it since.
Yeah. But that shouldn't be hard to find out, man. Somebody missed them pick, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody has to know what's going on there. But the worthless behavior, in particular where a child is involved, and I don't know if we haven't been too lenient on this, Joe. But maybe I'm just speaking with a bias as a man who loves women. I can't see the behavior at all, and that has been acceptable and considered normal. I don't see it as such. But that part there, we know get on to too much, no?
Yeah, I have my, ever since I had my concern, which I had shared with the commissioner, even before he became commissioner. And I think the police force has not still come around to understand that intelligence is what we need more of. It's not so many more boots on the ground. We need more people with brains.
Well,
I think it's intelligence to be able to investigate, you know.
I was listening to a story this morning, Joe, which is frightening, and that is that a witness who went and for the same cartel of not went and testified, and the people from the cartel put the boy picture up on Facebook. Brother, and this and the man with help and wait, this and the man, and so the man had to go into hiding because, of course, we have no witness protection plan. Now, the commissioner was making a point that I used to make all the time. When you go to court, you have to give a disclosure to the party that's being tried, no? His attorney has to get all information, all who witness who's gonna comment, what they want to say, all of that, which is a complete disclosure. But the one dangerous practice, and they used to say, "Oh well, you can't tell the police none because as you telling, get out there." Hi, Julia. Good night. But Joe, there has to be something like, since we have no witness protection plan, there has to be some way of intelligence comes from people. The same intelligence that you're speaking of comes from people out there, and nobody's gonna do it because these guys play for keeps. They know the play. Many cases have been lost because the witness has not showed up, cannot be found, and there are instances when they've been killed. So a frightening situation. It should. Uh-huh.
I have had many cases that we have dealt with both on behalf of government when I was in government, and I did some more in private life, no? And evidently, disclosure is a requirement. It's a requirement for the defendant. But I have seen cases in the US where you can have the disclosure, but there are certain information and certain characters that the disclosure doesn't have to be public, where you believe the risk of an individual person is heavily at risk.
Well,
So you can, the defendant can get the information, but the information is for the defendant, not for the public.
yeah, but the defendant himself is the one who let it out this time, apparently.
Well, that's the risk you're taking then, because.
But then, is it necessary? I mean,
Yeah.
why? What's the rationale behind it? I understand that you're accusing somebody of something, then that person needs to know what you're accusing him of, but who's accusing him, I don't think is that important because you're looking at the evidence and not necessarily the source of the evidence. That one,
I agree with you with that. That's what I'm saying. That to me, the disclosure is to tell the defendant what evidence you have. And I agree with you that at the time, I don't know if it is such mandatory that you have to give the name of the source of the defendant.
I and address and all of that.
And
I
as a
don't
matter
know.
of fact, this issue with Trump and the classified documents, those documents are classified very much for the same reason. They are classified because they are to protect the people where they get the information from. No, he's going to the court now and looking how the process, how they will be dealing with those classified documents. Because they still have to protect those people. So even though he's been taken to court for the way he was managing classified documents, they are still doing everything to protect those sources. So I take your point that you can have the evidence, but when it comes to the actual source,
Yeah.
that has to be done, and that will be done in a very protective environment. And
The
that's what
identification unnecessary.
right.
Yeah.
The judges have to be setting how it will be done because of the classified documents.
Correct. Some discretion is needed.
That's right.
Um,
Protect the source.
Another story this morning that I was listening to, Stake Bank, the people from Stake Bank, they sue the government now for X millions, hundreds of millions of dollars because of the Portico deal. But I thought we were clear on the fact that the Portico deal is no deal. But Stake Bank is saying now that just because government made it think about doing it, and in particular the PUP now reintroducing it to the House, that their business is affected and they need X amount of billions of dollars. But Joe, we have had this discussion before. Why is it that the people of Belize must suffer and pay the cost of the mistakes done by a few of these politicians? When can we go after them? Many of them have the assets. And in fact, when you hit a couple of them with then kind of blows, the rest will take heed and maybe not be so reckless with their actions in the future. It's easy for you to go out and say, boy, I make a mistake, but then I may have to pay. You know, that the Belizean people will pay whenever judgment comes down. We're doing a lot now with Ashcroft, a lot of behind the BTL fiasco, behind BEL fiasco. There are many monies that we're paying now that could be going to social services and other worthwhile projects. What do we do?
I didn't get clearly what is it that State Bank will be suing the government for. But I know for a fact that when this Feinstein had bought the first port we had, the first cruise ship port, the one there at the Fort Point,
Right.
he was given exclusivity.
Well,
And I know for a fact that at the time, I opposed it. I can say that now in the cabinet. And I told the cabinet and the prime minister that we are violating the law. We cannot give him exclusivity because it's violating the rights of other people. No, that exclusivity will not hold up in court. It has already been knocked down. So you cannot give that person exclusivity. You are violating the rights of other people.
good evening, Derla. Listen, I don't know that you cannot, because if they sign a document, some kind of agreement, this definitive agreement as such, and they're calling that, they said they also had one, and it wasn't contested as to the validity of it, of whether it's enforceable or not, and it turns out that it is enforceable. Then we got one problem. Maybe we have to look at the wide-reaching powers that we give our elected officials.
But sorry to interrupt. Are you saying that the definitive agreement is enforceable?
Well, that's what they're saying. They're saying that, and that in fact they have lost money because they had to stop their whole operations, and the people that they were talking to decided to switch over when they saw that Portico was getting ready to come on stream, because and it has been said that maybe the spot that Portico is in might be a more ideal spot for a cruise port than Stake Point, because they have to go out through the matters of building a causeway and all of that, which is a way down. That causeway should have been begun already, by the way. They're saying that as a consequence of even considering Portico, it cost them a lot of money, because it's a big investment that they made in that. And some of the ships that they were talking to ceased talks with them because of the possibility of something else coming online that they might want to deal with. I I leave this up to you. You know more than I do about
Yeah,
these
I was
things.
trying to get some clarity from you because I don't know if State Bank is going at the definitive agreement because the definitive agreement is yet to be tested. Remember, there was two
Well,
opinions.
no, the Portugal one, not the Portugal one. They have their own definitive agreement.
Yeah, they have an agreement,
They, right,
but did
and
the agreement
definitive.
give them exclusivity? But did the agreement give them
According
exclusivity? No, it didn't.
well, according to them, it did because according to the agreement that nobody else was supposed to be operating any other because it said that the study was done and it was uh, recognized. Might not be the right word, but the fact that they thought that Belize City could not accommodate more than one cruise ship terminal.
Yes, but
It would be practical and safe.
what I'm saying is that when Finstein first bought
Right.
what was the original cruise ship port at the Fort Point, he was given exclusivity, which was contrary to the law, and that was proven to be such. But what he did was this: the exclusivity was an asset, what you call the intangible asset, and that had enhanced the value. That when he sold the Fort Point cruise ship, he sold that.
He sold the exclusivity to also.
Yes, that's right. But he was using the exclusivity to enhance the value. That's when he sold it. Then
But
after
you're
he
saying it
sold,
was illegal.
yes, because it was declared as illegal, he couldn't enforce that. So the buyer at the time felt that, well, he was cheated because he was sold something that wasn't what he thought it was.
Wasn't valid,
And
yeah.
then he was, but the irony of it that he's the same person who decided to go to State Bank. So if that exclusivity agreement given to him when he had it and he sold it, then he couldn't have gotten the one at State Bank. And he turned around and he argued that indeed that what he was given was not right. That's why he was able to get the one at State Bank, because the exclusivity could not have held up.
In your opinion, can this area of Belize, and given that Portugal was going to go a little further down south, I believe, or by Northern Laguna or something, or still in the immediate area, can we accommodate more cruise ships, do you think? More cruise terminals? And should we?
Well, I go back to the professional study, which I keep referring to, is that we are going beyond what the experts had advised the government to do, the country. When I say government, I mean in the generic sense. Because the study was done, and I said it cost the country a sizable amount of money, over $1 million. And they were cautioning Belize that he cannot continue to expand into the cruise ship industry because the nature-based product that we are selling, our tourism product is a nature-based product. The only few in the world has that. No, one nature-based product cannot be impacted too much
Correct.
with tourists.
Or you lose everything.
And the argument was made strongly that at the time, now that may have changed, it might be even more. It took 4 cruise ship tourists to make up for what one overnight tourist did. So the government had a very good argument not to allow cruise ship tourists to go up too high because it will damage the very product for which the overnight tourist was giving more for. So they put it in a simple way. You are selling your arranges. Somebody willing to pay you $2 a bag. Why are you going to sell to the one for $1? So to me, from the time when they allowed the Harvest Key one to have gone through, contrary to this study, the Harvest Key one was supposed to get what they call packet size. Not what I recommended, which may only carry 800.
But this is what I'm saying. Couldn't they restrict the size of the ships coming in and the amount of tourists coming in on those cruises?
Yes, because the government had all the right on behalf of the people to protect the product. And if you know that your product is being impacted to the point of where you're likely to lose it because of the fragility of it.
And the volume, yeah.
That's right. You had all the right to limit it.
Self-preservation is the first law of nature.
Well, it was a product that we could make money from, but the minute we allowed too many people to be impacting it and pays far less for it. If you look at the cruise ship, we don't get very much from the cruise ship. At least with the hotels, we get the hotel tax.
But
And then
Joe,
with the cruise ship, we would get the head tax, but then they share the head tax.
yeah, yeah. The thing is that if we really, the tourists will come as long as the product is appealing. When it burns out and they're no longer enjoying what they felt they could come to Belize for, Belize is no longer the beauty, then they're not going to care. They're just going somewhere else and we
Exactly.
will left with one
Exactly.
damaged environment, no
Exactly.
fish to eat, nothing to do but sit down and watch some barren land.
So when they are asking for these, like the one in the definitive agreement, I think they were looking for 25 years. By
Right.
then they would have they would have recovered their investment, make a large profit, and by then obviously the asset would have been so depreciated. But they don't mind because they could go somewhere else.
They done made theirs, Uncle. Indeed. But then you can't only blame them, Joe. In fact, you have to blame us and the
Oh, yes.
people who
Oh, no,
administrate
no.
our affairs.
I would never blame them. They come to buy and we sell.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying about Michael Ashcroft too.
Yeah, I
We
agree
could
with you.
demonize him all we want, but at the end of the day, he's a businessman.
That's right.
And that's what businessmen people do. Make as much money as they can, pay the least tax as they can, and then get their profits and run. Change directions when they have to, no, for their
We
own
have-
benefit.
We have to blame those who we elected to represent us, who negotiated a bad deal for us.
Yeah.
Can be blamed. And I'm talking of government in a generic sense. I wanted that to be made understood. That is what is happening to us, Mr. Chairman. It's not fair to the people of this country for government negotiating on behalf of the people how they will manage their assets, how they will sell their goods, and then you turn around, sold out highly lucrative prerequisites for development like your utilities, telephone, water, electricity. It was too early to fully privatize. You could have gone maybe 25%, as they did with BTL first with Telecom. British Telecom.
Keep that special share, no?
That's right. So to me, that was the mistake we were making. We were selling out assets, and Ashcroft was willing to buy, so he bought.
But Joe,
And
go ahead.
then they gone to take it back from him.
And it cost me a hell of a lot of money.
Well, it cost us over what? It cost us a total about over 800 million.
Well, remember when I take it where and sell it to Prasa, and it turns out that Prasa, first thing where Belize people start about, what I want prostitution thing, because he into all kind of pornography and whatnot. And then they decide we don't want him because that just me want. What I'm in the term when I had when I just a signature will never mean nothing. And then they took it back, but sell it again to the very Michael Ashcroft, who they again found a problem with. And when the people start to ball and whatnot, they decide we want to take it back from him at any cost. And what a cost it was.
Well, it was because when Ashcroft was pressured to sell, he was pressured, and he decided in the end he will sell, but he sold on the condition that when Prosa buy, if for any reason Prosa was not able to make good on the payment and consummate the transaction, that he, Ashcroft, would have the first right of refusal. So when Prosa dropped through and couldn't make the payment,
Okay, yeah.
then Ashcroft came back and enforced the agreement. And that's how he got it. And then the government gone and took it back. And when they took it back, it took some time to then finalize because they had to go to arbitration several times. And when they finalized it, the shares alone gone up to 250,000 plus the interest because of the delay was almost 250,000.
Yeah.
But
We got
the truth about it, all the legal fees.
I see Greg trying to get in there. Good evening, sir. Joe, there are two.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. There are two entities I think that's letting us down. One are the opposition because the main reason for a two-party system is that one would hold the other accountable. And the second is the fourth estate. And a media, of course, when you have government as the biggest advertisers and nobody wants to lose the advertising dollar, the business community don't do much advertising in Belize. And in fact, the government being the biggest employer, and they have all the Social Security that advertise, BEL that advertise, all the other entities that advertise, then the media kind of like in a tough spot because they cut their, like they did when they cut the subventions. Remember when the PUP was back downsizing and then got up on one tear? And I am convinced that one of the main reasons why the whole hula baloo started in 2005 that brought down the PUP government. Of course, there were other things that they used to provide impetus for that their movements. But at the end of the day, I think the cutting the subventions from the media, and when you heard that some of the money that these media houses were being given, it may obscene, man. So
Well, I'm well aware of it because remember I was a senior member in the Public Finance Committee that was auditing internally and investigating the whole expenditures to the government when we had to do that fiscal consolidation program.
right.
It was then we discovered that they were getting a fixed amount monthly fix, whatever they do, but they understood what they were to do. And that was when we made that cut indeed, among many others. We had some very heavy expenditures in the embassies right across the world. Those we cut because, again, they were not getting any benefits from them.
Well, we have to discuss that at some point too,
Yeah, yeah.
because these embassies that we have that we're funding in Brussels and all these faraway places, isn't it about time we look at these and try to figure out what the cost benefit, as you would always say? How are are we getting something for our money, fair value for the money we're spending? Because we're spending a lot, and some of these people go out there and live high on the hog, doing absolutely nothing, traveling all over the world, running home every now and again just to say hi and run back.
That's right.
Yeah,
So what we did at the time, we took a different look at the embassies. We had already dealt with the media. We realized that they had to be cut and we just cut them out. The embassies was where we had to do some reviews because if you take like in Brussels, we don't have much Belizeans over there. So Brussels was not normally there to look after citizens, right? Our citizens. But we wouldn't have much citizens over there. So that embassy was more to look after trade, how to assist Belize with trade and other geopolitical issues. Then when we move into like the US was more because of the amount of Belizeans we have in the US. They were more to look after the US, the Belizean citizens. And then when we go on to the next one, Mexico. Mexico again was not so much Belizean citizens. So the embassies at times, of course, they are all there for US, for Belizean citizens. But we don't have our citizens so much in Europe. But we have them more in the US. That's where we have the highest concentration of Belizeans. So what we did, we decided and we reviewed the budget for all the embassies and streamlined it to meet what was the objective of them. But you are onto something, and I will not prolong it, but I will say this, that you was talking of the fourth estate, which is the media. And I agree with you that the media, perhaps we would expect them, and they should, we do better to try to protect the democracy. About those very things we were talking just now, whether they were unethical in terms of their management of our money, whether they were sinister and corrupt, whether they were just poor in management, the bottom line of it. If you look through history, Mr. Chairman, and any one of us scared to take time out, wherever you have suicidal democracy came about when the citizens, after they elected themselves, begin to become indifferent to the citizens. The fourth estate became a party to the ruling parties. The only thing that saved democracies in those countries was the people. They're saying only the people can save the people. That is true. The only thing that can bring back as I see it, Belize, don't continue to hope that we'll get some good politicians tomorrow. Let's strive for it. We must not give up on that. But what we must begin to do is to let the citizens come together and demand it, because that is our right.
Gregory, how are you doing this evening, sir? You can hear me? You're not muted.
Oh, good evening.
There
Yes,
you go.
I was on mute there.
Okay.
Good evening. Yeah, I was listening to what Mr. Cowie was saying, and it is all very interesting that when we think of democracy and we think of citizen involvement, it doesn't work without it. It doesn't function properly without it. And so we need to make sure that the citizens are engaged, and this is also dependent on the government being a government that wants the involvement of its citizens. And I don't see that happening, or it has not happened in Belize history at all.
Well, Greg,
The government seemed, wait, let me just finish. The government seemed to just rile us up at the time, or the opposition or whoever, when they want something done on their behalf. But there's not that continuing process of citizenship engagement. And until they have that sense that we're all in this together, that the people are part of what, and we have a common goal, an objective for the nation, it's not going to happen.
I don't know though that any government is gonna want that, but the people have to want it. If we're gonna wait for the government to say, "Oh, we want citizen participation," I don't think that is gonna happen.
That is true from that perspective, but I'm saying government also have a responsibility to kind of initiate it, especially in a country like Belize, where there are lots of deficiencies and lots of cultural reasons that has brought us to this point. One was slavery, one was just colonialism, and all those things that has in the past not want to have active citizen involvement. And so we do need some initiative from the government to make sure it happens, because all these things, all this takes education, and in educating the people, it takes money. And the only people that are going to have that kind of money and capacity to make sure it happens is an entity of government. Yes, it will take the citizenry to demand it and to keep pressing at it. But unless we could find a benefactor with $1 billion that could say, "Hey, citizens, start getting involved in these things," it doesn't kind of happen that way. It needs an impetus, and I believe that the only source of it could be some really alert government politicians and leadership from the state.
Joe,
Can I inject something here?
of course.
I think the chairman said it quite strongly. What you are expecting is what they call passive democracy. A passive democracy is where you allow the elected to take the initiative. Democracy, to be robust, has to be proactive. The citizens must take the lead. And the analogy best used is that you are the shareholders of the business. You appoint the board. They run the company. You don't wait for them to come to you to tell them for you to engage you. You are the owners. You must engage yourself. Proactive democracy is what gives you a robust and strong democracy. That passive democracy is what is hurting Belize.
Yes.
You see, there was a period where we get hoodwinked into passive democracy. The first leader of this country, the father of the nation, was so revered. He was so much loved and believed in that we go vote and we leave it to him. And everybody felt that, boy, that is the way democracy works. Because, yes, we can look back and say that he could have been trusted. But what we were doing at the time was encourage a passive democracy. Democracy has to be proactive. We don't wait for nobody to come with no millions.
I think
but then how do we
Actually, can
How
I
do
say, may
we?
I finish now?
Okay, go ahead. Go
Finish.
ahead.
Um, Plato once said that the ideal system is a benevolent dictator, and maybe George Price was that because he was benevolent. I think he had best interests of people in heart. Now, you're right, Joe. I think we set the stage where we didn't expect that the people coming up after him would have been so drastically different than what he portrayed there, which was the best interest of the people. I sincerely feel that he did do that. But what came after that then was a self enrichment, self aggrandizement. It's just everything was turned away from the interests of the people towards the interests of the politicians, and that's where we went wrong. So, sorry about that, Greg. We go ahead and make your
No,
point.
no, no. That's point. That's fine. I kind of want to push a little bit on the benevolent dictator bit for George Price that you kind of alluded to. I think that while I don't know why. I think that while he did have the interests of the country at heart more than the leadership we see, I think he did set up a system, like Mr. Coy said, that was bound to fail sooner or later. And the reason is he set it up that way because he didn't want much opposition. He didn't foster and develop our democracy to the extent of what democracy should have been. Um, he set up a system that ensured his continued victory election and election after, when he could have brought about a more equal, more appropriate democracy for Belize. So that's my
You think so?
uh,
I would have to. I beg to differ. I don't think he did. I think what happened, it wasn't intentional as such. He knew that he wouldn't be here forever. I'm sure he knew that.
in the end. I think he did. After he got independence, I think he relaxed his way of operation quite
Or
a bit,
maybe
quite a bit. But when he was focused on taking Belize to independence, he gave the opposition no room for development. He did
that
not.
might
He
have been
did
the only way. At that point, the opposition was only opposing and not
No, the
necessarily.
opposition didn't have a chance. That's the job of the opposition. The opposition
No, no,
had
no,
no the
no, no,
opposition.
no, no.
Okay.
Opposition don't oppose just to oppose. They hold the government at check, hold their feet to the fire, but then just don't oppose for oppose sake. Just because you're in there and everything you have to oppose, and that's the system we work under. Don't
Well,
you think there's something wrong with that?
I don't think the opposition was just there to oppose. I believe that Mr. Goldson gave this country a lot of direction.
You
Uh,
serious?
yeah, of course he did. Of course he did.
I
And he
disagree.
balanced out, that's fine. And he balanced out a lot of the policies that George Price was initiating. And we have to also look that while he was
Give
may
give
have
us give us an example of what policy he balanced out that Judge Price was trying to push through that he had to pull in check. Because that's what you're saying, right?
I think that George Price was more willing to accept a lot of the Guatemalan positions earlier on in terms.
No, Gregory.
I believe he did. I believe he did. I
What,
believe he
what
did.
what evidence do you have? And I go to my learned friend Joe's point of view that when you have an opinion like that, you should have some facts behind it. Now, Judge Price, and this long has been said that Judge Price, when the sellout believes Judge Price was the one who stepped up and said, "Not a blade of grass, not a drop of water."
That
And
that that of course that will be a policy. Any politician when they got caught, that I'm
got
not in
caught
that.
doing what, Greg?
Got caught doing what? Got
Yes.
caught. Do you remember the conference in London where the governor came back and complained to the people that the prime minister had met with Guatemalan agents, and that they were making decisions outside of the general agreement, and it was selling out the country and the people lock, stock, and barrel.
Let
I mean,
me
we can't take everything the British says, but I'm just
thank
saying,
you.
do you remember that particular
Of course,
conversation.
they wanted the people to not trust George Price and to be against George Price because the British knew that George Price was anti-colonialism. Now, Sandra Cowie, and I find her very verbose. I find her annoying at times, but every now and again she makes some good points, and I think that's why she's tolerated for the most part. She made a point yesterday, and she asked the host of CREM if they believes would be better off with a good relation with Guatemala. That in fact Guatemala is
We
a
want a
country with
good
a lot of
relation.
people.
Yeah,
Uh,
we
um,
want
le- yeah,
Guatemala, but Guatemala claims us, so we cannot have a good relationship with them
yeah,
until they drop their claim from our
but that's
country.
not the point. We're not getting there yet. We know that to be a fact. But the point she was making is that it's a huge amount of people over there would be a wonderful trading opportunity, and
Uh,
that in fact, if we could tap into that, we could sell just about everything we could create. And the point she was making was that we ought to be pursuing diplomatic means. Could it be that Judge Price was pursuing diplomatic means? And isn't that what that isn't that the only thing that will bring this problem to
Well,
solution?
well, Mr. Chairman, I know that there was a conscious effort. I know that because, again, I was involved in it. We made a move to try to get Guatemalan investors to come to Belize. I personally was meeting with some of them. We had the plan that if we get investors, Guatemalan investors, to come to Belize, we believe that they will be better prepared to defend Belize. That was a strategy was thought of. It's true that we got one or two of them, but it didn't go long. So we want good relations with Guatemala. Evidently, we should want to have good relations. But we want to now settle this dispute because we couldn't have it with them, with they claiming us. But we
Right.
tried the trade thing because the trade thing sometimes helped, but it didn't.
yeah.
Well, I think we're not far apart on this one, because I do believe that we need to solve the claim. We need to get rid of it. But I also believe that we would be better off living in more peace with a good relation with our neighbor as opposed to this hostility. Now, we
But
certainly can't.
the hostility is not on our part. We
That's
do
all
we
right. It doesn't matter, but it exists. It exists. And the
because of
fact that
their claim.
the fact is that they are so much bigger than we are. Their army, I mean, where we got one plane, they just thieved the one gun where we had at the Air Force camp. Well, I mean, really. Uh, okay, you're browsing at risk. What's going on? Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
we
hearing
are.
you. I'm
Yeah,
hearing you.
yeah.
This is
We hear you.
something going on here.
We're hearing you well. We're
All
hearing you
right,
well.
good. Yeah. So I'm saying that I think it's time also that we get past uh this propaganda that George Price was selling out Belize to Guatemala. There's absolutely no evidence of that. You speak of Golson. I think Golson almost brought this country to the brink of violence and destruction, when he came and prematurely released those proposals that in fact weren't signed, and the man obviously had no intention of signing them, and it was just in a
We
matter of
don't know what he was
discussion.
going to do. We
Well,
don't know what he
we
was going
know
to
what
do.
he didn't do. We know what he did. He didn't sign anything, and at the end of the day, and people like that would tend to want to push through, even in spite of the opposition. He did not do that. He came back and he said, "These are just proposals. Nothing happened." I know it's hard for people to accept that because we're so long we have held on to that belief that yes, indeed, he did something wrong. He didn't. If anybody did something wrong, was Philip Gorson, who betrayed the trust of the people who were trying to do the negotiations before prematurely. I
No,
might add.
I think whenever that's my concern always, that there should be no discussion in secrecy that's not at some point brought to the attention of the people. And I think Philip Dawson did a patriotic thing when he
I
brought
don't
that.
think so.
That's fine.
It
That's
would
fine.
have come to the people at some point, but you don't do that in the middle of the negotiations. You can't do that. You can't run the country on a consensus as such until yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Again, I mean, I live the time that you are talking about. I live it. And I think that Golson was a bit unfair because I thought he was looking for a political advantage to come back, knowing that they were to come back together and put the proposal to the people. But he came back ahead and created a situation as they told there was a sinister move by Price to sell out the country.
Yeah.
And that to me was dangerous. Because the truth about it, there was no evidence of Price looking to sell out the country. What Price was looking for, and he admitted it, he said it, at least in privacy to us, if not in public, that he was trying to see how something could be worked out to good relations with Guatemala. But Guatemala, we just couldn't get them to come around until one president finally agreed that fine, we will settle it. And then what happened? They got rid of him.
But you know,
So
Joe,
I think Olson may appear to some of us to look that patriotic. I don't think that was very patriotic move at the time.
Oh, I believe it was, because and the policy was not even against George Price. It was the Webster proposal. So it was a American concocted policy
correct.
that
They were proposing.
that they were trying to enforce.
So it's
But
not
it
George
shows
Price that
us-
was proposing anything there.
No, it wasn't George Price.
All
but,
right.
but he was seeming to be in agreement
How
with
can
it.
you be seeming though? How can you say that they had to come back to Belize and bring it and present it to the people before anything was done?
Well,
But Mr. Chairman, let me give you some of the facts again. There was not a thing that George Price had started, you know. George Price said, and he said that in meetings with us, that it was the British that was telling him, well, listen, we're going to have to talk with Guatemala. We're going to have to try to work things out. That then bring it to George Price. Not that we wanted to do it, but Price felt that, listen, if we just outright turn it down, we will not have the support of the British. So what?
There you go.
Let's sit around, but we don't want to go with it.
Right.
We can talk about it, but we don't decide whether they agree to it. But at least you can't accuse us of being recalcitrant. We
But
don't
you
want to
know-
talk. We had to play a role with the British. In the end, that period of Belize, to see that they outsmart one of the biggest powers in the world, which we did, through internationalizing our problem. We outsmart the British. We did. We made them believe that we wanted to talk with the Guatemalans. We don't want to talk with no Guatemalans at the time. But it was a thing we had to do. But we don't mean we may agree with it.
Well, in fact, a part of the agreement for our independence is that we were supposed to take steps to try and settle the claim.
That's right.
So that a part of it, that meant like asterisk behind our independence.
Right.
So we have to, and that's why when we went to decide whether we were going to the ICJ or not, and for years, the British was trying to get to the ICJ, everybody was, and Guatemala was objecting. Finally, Guatemala went to a vote and decided, let's do it. I don't think we had any other choice but to also go and seize that opportunity and let's try to bring this matter to a close. I don't see that the risks are as large as people think it is. I think we're going to remain an independent country. It's to the benefit of the whole world. They don't want to see any unrest in this area. And given that we as passionate as Belizeans are, we have not shown it yet that we can stand up, but I believe we can. And there'll be a lot of unrest over here and it'll be held to pay.
Mr. Chairman, if you allow me to, I think that we somehow have been derailed in the sense that there was something I wanted to mention regarding our democracy. And I just wanted to quickly put it in context of history. And this was studies done by the UWI and Manchester in particular too. If you look at the colonies, we look at the former colonies, especially of Britain. If you look at all those colonies, when they were emerging from colonialism into independence, they were all great charismatic leaders in the Caribbean and in Africa. The Caribbean was the George Price, the Tom Adams, this one, Michael Manley's and others, the Barrows, Eric Williams. They were brilliant, charismatic leaders that were emerging. But
Be right back.
the
I have
masses,
to close my windows.
the masses of the people in these colonies were very much still uneducated. So what was emerging were leaders who were looked up to carry the torch. We trusted them. We believed in them. We believed they knew what they were doing. So all the countries went through this period that we are going through. What I think is happening to us, if you look at with 43 years, there were some things that we should have learned from those who gone before us. Belize is right now what I call at the democratic political crossroad of history. If we do not address the repeated failures of governments today, this country can have some very, very terrible future. If we do not embrace proactive democracy with the initiative coming from the people, we can be in serious trouble. We have reached a crossroad where the men of the George Price and the Philip Goldsons and them, we will not see them again. And don't we wait for them to come back. We have to now assert the participatory democracy. And we have to bend the elected to the will of the people. So the quicker we can begin to organize, like shows like these, and begin to try to educate the citizens of this country, that you have to participate beyond the ballots. If you do not participate beyond the ballots, you will have to then face the bullets. If people, elections after election, swing the pendulum far to the right, then frustrated by the behavior of the people who they so believed in, they go and they swing it the other way, and then they face the same consequences. When frustrations continued like this before, a movement can be made among the people. What happened? Less and less people begin to vote. And the less people begin to vote, the more the politicians will be able to control those who vote through money. That is what you call suicidal democracy. And that's a historical fact. If we do not take some measures now for the citizens to organize and to begin to participate, what this show is doing right here tonight is the kind of example of what more should be doing. So I wanted to share that history, and I think that we must begin to take stock of where we are right now in Belize with the leader of government and the leader of the opposition and the party, the two parties, and see what is happening.
I agree with you, Mr. Cowie, that the participation is critical, but I don't see from the history of our country, I don't see what the impetus is to get greater participation. I really don't see what will get people more involved than they currently are, and that's our effort here, is trying to awake something in people, and efforts being made, but I don't quite see what is happening on the ground right now to actually make that happen. And I always believe that government has a responsibility to make sure that the democracy is open, transparent, and that it is participatory, that much people and most people can get involved in it. And because in the end, if they have the true interest, not just the political party's interest, but the true interest of the nation, that's what they want. And I agree that in the end, I believe that George Price sort of made democracy much better in Belize. I think that he could have done some things differently in that election where the UDP won the first time, but he chose not to take some actions and to probably see the experiment of transition of government happening. I do believe that there were things that he could have done that could have choked off a UDP victory at that time. So,
I think that, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What I wanted to say that you said just now you don't see in history. Well, you won't find it in history. I think the leader of the opposition made a point, I don't know if it was on the show this morning, when he was talking about revolution. Not violent revolution, no. The revolution that we are talking about in the political sense of the revolution, don't look for anything in history for beliefs, because if you look to history, we are perpetrate that.
Yeah.
What we need to do in promoting participatory democracy, which is to strengthen democracy, the only way you can promote democracy and make it robust is through participatory democracy, because we are expecting people to be the way they may have been in the past. There will be no more Goldsons, there will be no more George Price, there will be no more Richards, there will be no more of these kind of people. They have gone and they will not come back. So what we need to do is that we have to choose from among we have. But when we choose them, we have to hold them in check. And the only people that can hold them in check are we, the voters. What we have to begin to do, and I don't want to be going too long with this, but we have to begin to look at civil disobedience, which is quite within the law. We have to look at groups coming together and making demands. Just to show you recently, when a minister can tell publicly, he came out and he was in the newspaper, when they put on the price control, and the Chamber of Commerce representing the business community wrote to the Prime Minister to ask why is it we weren't consulted. Imagine a minister, the Minister of Agriculture, who deal with price control, answer, they say, who asked them who voted for them? That's the height of arrogance. Who voted for the members of the chamber?
Yeah.
You know who voted for them? The who voted for you all? The we voted
Yeah.
for you all. That's the height of arrogance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, to me, what I'm telling you, these kind of things will just keep increasing and increasing till when you put a stop to it. We have to begin to ask ourselves, do we want a robust democracy? Then you have to pay the price for it. And the price for it is not silence and complacency. The price for it is not fanatical partisanship. Why? My mother made PUP, my father made PUP, all of them, me want to remain PUP. Same thing with UDP.
Yeah.
That is not helping this country. We have to become proactive. There are a lot of things we can do. I know there are things we can do to put a stop to it. But it won't be one of us. And
Well-
I think some of the things we can do, we need to begin to discuss it. Because we have a right to do it.
Yeah.
You look at the Constitution, I know that they are looking to amend. But some of the things that are being talked about out there is totally of no significance to our governance.
Yeah.
They're not.
I agree, and I see the problem even as we speak of the Constitution, because we haven't got, people haven't probed enough to even ask the government, what is it about the Constitution that we want to change? Where are we heading with this? What's the intent? What's going to be the end result? And so we don't see that sort of participation and that sort of aggressive involvement with the people. So far, I think they have had so many of these things, and they're poorly attended, and the few people that get up there are vigorous in asking questions and trying to hold challenges and get some answers. But I don't think there's enough broad appeal and response from the public. And
Are you skeptical, Gregory? Are you concerned that maybe there's an agenda at play?
I believe there's an agenda.
They have something to-
Yeah. I'm sure there's an agenda. Because this was rolled out without any request, and it came out of to me, it came out of the blue. It
But
did not.
people have long been, to their credit, people have long been suggesting that maybe the Constitution needs addressed and reform without
Maybe it
even
needs to
knowing
be
what the
tweaked.
Constitution is, though. You know?
Maybe it needs to be, and we know it needs to be tweaked, because we see a lot of failures with what's going on. But a lot of the failures that we see are not actually
Constitutional.
based on the Constitution. It's based on the
Right.
people that are running the government and their failures to be held accountable. So that is
Or
where
our
the fear
failure
is.
to hold them accountable.
Our
Because
failure to hold them accountable,
Yeah.
and their failure, the Constitution as it's currently set up doesn't have, I believe, sufficient check and balances in it, so that the people
But
can hold the ministers and the policies that are made accountable.
the Constitution, though, is not such a big document, and I don't think that, as it is, it has a lot of stuff in there. A lot of it is common sense. A lot of it is tried and proven true, cut and paste, as if you will, from different constitutions that have worked. There's only so much you can do with that actually, and so much you can write in, because a lot of it then is in the laws of the country, which is supposed to be in conformity with the constitution, but not necessarily included in there. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know that there's so much in there that's causing the problems that we have. You're absolutely correct. It is more about the mismanagement, people that are doing, that are in control as such, and the inability of us, the people, the inaction of us that allows it to happen and keep taking the $50 every election and putting somebody in. Look at a man like John Saldivar. I don't know how in the world that fellow could be elected or be made to run after the allegations against him. And yes, you could say, oh, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. But when you look at the implications, and when there's so much surrounding, so much negativity and problems, you have to say, you know what, boy, maybe it's better we try somebody else. You can't be the only person that can run that area, that can represent that area, and maybe we have to look elsewhere.
Well,
But
I'll say something, and I'm not defending John Saldivar in any way, but I do believe that just having those comments by the United States government, State Department, and those things broadcast about him is not reason to hold him in any conviction
Boy,
of anything.
there's a matter of a very disturbing murder that occurred. And there's enough to link. I believe the evidence.
I don't
You,
think that
you
link
really
could
don't
be
think
made.
so?
I don't
You
think
don't,
that link could be made. There's some association, but I don't think a link to murder could be made.
isn't the
Yeah.
association bad enough though?
Well,
Given what transpired.
not because you know somebody that does something bad means that you were involved in
But
that.
it's
And
more than
that's
that. It's more than that. There was association to the point where they were hanging out together, having parties at the man house.
yeah, but
There's a lot of connection there
yeah,
that is enough
he
to
was
raise.
friend with the guy. There's no doubt about that. But I don't see I don't see murder in that picture. And what I wanted to say is that in a democracy, ultimately the people makes the choice. And so I have no problem with the people of Belmopan making a decision whether they want Jan Saldiva to represent them or not. He would not necessarily be my choice for all the reasons that we have listed. But if people choose to make him their leader, or bring him back to the house and such, that is
But
fine.
of course,
I don't have a problem with that.
we're not there yet, fortunately, because he has to still have to beat whoever runs for the PUP in that division.
Hmm.
But
but
uh,
just again to correct on the issue of whether the revision was just something thrown out. No, it wasn't. Remember, the Prime Minister came with 3 or 4 amendments to the Constitution. One of them was the Public Service Commission. One was the Service Commission. One was this thing with let's call it the Shine Resolution. And there was a 4th one. I personally approached him and told him that I don't think you should go through with these things. That if you want to review the Constitution, then let's do that. And I was not the only one. Many did it.
Yeah.
So I believe that he came with the decision out of sincerity that we should review the Constitution. No. The more we talk about the Constitution and the more we can understand it, because the truth about it, as you rightly said, the illusion of the shared prosperity has nothing to do with that Constitution. Nothing.
mhm.
The illusion of shared prosperity has nothing to do with whether John Sadiva should run or not. The illusion of shared prosperity is simple that the Constitution is not being applied.
Yeah.
If you are not applying the Constitution, and I can name instances in the Constitution, just to name a few. When you look at the rights where we have the 23, look at the abuse to people's property rights. Government owes over 78 million. I don't know if that ever come down to properties what they acquired. Public acquisition. How can a government take your land, even though he want it for public use? Let's say it was a genuine public use.
Yeah.
That's your property rights, is sacred rights. That to me is egregious. That's not serious. Then you look at some of the rights of the citizens in education, in health. But they are being discriminated against because of their partisan support. You take the people tax dollars and choose who you will give it to. That's a serious violation of the Constitution. And I could go on and name some of those rights that are being violated today. Let's go on now to the finance violations. The Constitution demands that the accounts, the public accounts, should be audited within a certain time after 7 years, and they haven't been audited.
So that's unconstitutional.
It is.
Does it say may or shall?
Shall, must, you have to.
There you go.
Must. Because, gentlemen, yes, I am the auditor, so I do understand the importance of audit. But simple, audit is a part of accountability.
You would think.
Not think, I know it is. Audit
It is.
a part
It
of
is.
accountability.
It is.
Now, the way how for them to be, they must be accountable. The elected must be accountable to the electors.
Because it's our money they're spending.
So you are telling me that you come every year with 1.4 million and more, and you spend it, and we don't know whether it's true or not. We don't know whether the amount will properly spent. We don't, because there's no audit. So I can go through that Constitution and I can show you the amount of things that are not being complied with, the amount of violations of that Constitution. The supplementary. They were going for supplementaries contrary to the financial audit reformer. Contrary, millions of dollars. The matter was taken to the court, but just for a judicial decision, not a litigation. The court ruled that it was a violation of the law, but it was a judicial decision. They were looking for a judicial decision and they got it. In other words, the court said you're wrong, but you can't do it because you never come to me with one case. What I am trying to emphasize that we could talk with the on this show. And please don't, I am passionate about it. I feel strong about it. I was there. I sacrificed. But I see how our democracy is going. When you could take one section, one of the recommendation that you had withdrawn all of them, do the review of the Constitution. Why at this time you will single out that one? That if you spend more than 12 years, 12 months, you will be banned for life. Why you single that out?
Well, that is obvious. What I want?
Yeah, but the obvious of it, Mr. Chairman, is what is it? To me, that's a serious violation.
It is.
It shows corruption. It shows
that
corruption
right there.
in.
That's
I
worse. That's worse than corruption, gentlemen. You are dealing with a person's rights.
But it's also stupidity, because they must know. Whoever is coming up with this must know that people want to see this, and people are going to question and wonder what this about. But what I'd like to see done, and I think it's in there somewhere, if you're running for office and you only got one house and want $200 in your bank account, how in the hell after 5 years you got $10 million? You don't get $2 million a year, certainly. And there's somehow there must be a way where you can account for that. And is there no law against enrichment like that you have no proof?
Mr. Chairman, I could guarantee you 100% there is the law. The law is there. But what happened? They did not even appoint back the committee. There is a committee not set up by law where every member of the House of Parliament must declare every year their
Every year.
assets and their liabilities, and that's right. That is
And
what they have to do.
It's
And
not
then they have-
done.
No, it's not. That's what I'm saying with the
Now,
talk of,
is that in the Constitution, Joe? Or is it just in the bylaws of the country?
no, it has to be in the you see every
Well, it should be if it's not.
no, it has to. What happened? You have the Constitution. Then all the provisional laws, the thousands of laws, all the laws have to be consistent with the Constitution.
Right.
All of those laws have to give effect to the Constitution. You can't pass a law that is not consistent with the Constitution. So when the law is passed, that you must declare every year, that's to monitor to see if you are increasing in assets, which cannot be accounted for. But then they are not even filing, so they are not complying with the law. And what
Is
happened?
is the Integrity Commission even active?
That's it. That's what I'm talking about. The Integrity Commission.
They're the
That's
ones
it.
that should hold them to that, right?
Yes. No.
Uh,
No. You see what happened with us is this: the Integrity Commission cannot hold you to it. It can, but once you comply, now who is to hold them to it? I would say this: that the Director of Public Prosecution should take more note of looking at the violation of our laws and act on it, because the ministers will not hold them accountable when they themselves violate the law. When the ministers themselves are violating the law, it's the DPP.
well,
I know of a DPP that I work with. He saw something. He gets some information that something wrong was happening at the hospital, and he led the way and gone and investigate. Now at that time, my good friend Lindy Rogers was the minister for hospital. Well, Lindy never take kindly to it because enough in their mind, the DPP should have never done that. When in fact he was right. So the DPP now, Ratnissa was his name. He went on vacation. He went home. You know, they never bring him back.
yeah. Well, that the kind of thing I guess Greg was alluding to, with the kind of corruption that occurs with that government and began occurring, in particular when Mr. Price started getting older and had lost control over his flock, if you will. I think that there's a lot in there that, you're right, can be revised, but I don't know that a wholesale revision or upturn. And some people are even saying, let's get rid of the Constitution altogether. There has to be order. There has to be rules that we need to abide by. And the rules are there based on common sense and on tested and tried, proven true methods of governance. They're not like they just pull it out of the tin air and say, well, make it sure it's in there. Obviously, there was some thought and deliberation and some research done to it. I mean, I'm saying some of the things go back as far as the Magna Carta, to
Exactly.
Barnaby's Code. These are things that has to be in place for a government to run properly. Now, much I think a big part of our problem is non-compliance with the
right.
laws,
That's
not
it.
necessarily non-existent clause.
Thank God you said it.
And that's the
That's it.
problem. Even if we go
Non-compliant.
through and change it and
Exactly.
create whatever these guys are envisioning
We're still
now,
in trouble.
we're
That's right.
still
That's
and
the
it may
point
and
I've
it
been
may
trying to make all the time.
and it may even be
Compliant.
made weaker so that they could do what they want to do.
Exactly. Make it easier for them to jump through the loopholes.
Well,
Yes,
they won't
yes.
be able to because you have to go to a referendum. But the point to be made is
Well, Joe, you know, a referendum is another election, my brother.
We'll come back to that. But the
That
point
can be
is,
bought.
no, let's not get away from the point because you brought it up. And that's what I was trying to get to all the time. There is nothing in that constitution, and I know that constitution in and out. I could almost quote them for you. I deal with the 40 years. No, the point I'm making, there is nothing in that constitution, and I am willing to debate it. I don't have to debate it. And nobody could show me where something is lacking in the constitution, why the poverty, why the crimes, and why the corruption. Nothing is in there that causes it. So to me, that same constitution that is there could have bring the shared prosperity. Then we could look at it and say, boy, because sure we could improve. We'll move up now, you know. We'll get the shared prosperity. But like every Any institution, there will be room for improvement. But you're not going to your constitution, but tamper with it every minute. So to me, I am insisting you go to those forums. And I was talking with the chairman Sunday. Well, not Sunday, 2 days ago, yes. You go to the forum. If you hear somebody in that forum get up and say the problem with the constitution, it is not being applied, it's not being complied with. Trust me, you will not find many people saying it, if any at all. Why? To show you how ignorant they are of the constitution. Not just the wording of it. But how you know? Don't you realize that when the government took your land, public acquisition, you try to negotiate with the government. In the end, all right, then give you one little lesson where you may ask for. But you can't get it.
You're still not geared.
Exactly.
But Joe, these people are living a good life, high on the hog. They're doing what they want with all the money they got. They travel first class. They fly all over the world. They hire who they want. Their family. How do we take that away? They're not going to give it up. And I believe it was Godwin Hulsu at a public meeting at the Holy Redeemer Parish Hall said this, and it resonated. It struck a chord. He said, nothing happens without pressure. If you want water, you need to put pressure for it to run. If you want people to do things, you need to apply pressure. Obviously, we have no pressure applied to these people to do the right thing. They're not going to do it again, Gregory, on their own. They're not going to volunteer it.
I'm aware of that.
They will have to be, and maybe Joe has the right idea. Maybe there needs to be some type of uprising. I mean, you don't want to destroy the village to save it, and we certainly wouldn't want to be living under any kind of unstable conditions, no, unrest and whatnot. But there comes a time when you have to make the sacrifice and say, well, wait, this is the only way we're going to get it. We need to get something done. We need to do something.
Mr. Chairman, let me show you something. When you look at the definitive agreement, which you did look at, and you see the amount of taxes that would have been foregone, that in itself, you know, a democracy would have bring people into the streets and want to burn down the National Assembly. That you should never tolerate. So I believe indeed that the one complacency have set in. We have been lulled. And what happened? This patronage system that Dr. Vernon wrote about, Dillon, I think more people should read it. The patronage system has been perpetrated by the two sides. But when you have a patronage system and you put so many of your cronies in government, it means that they will fight tooth and nail to keep them there. Those out here who suffer the consequences are not prepared to fight. Some of them have been lulled. They just kind of get frustrated, then give up. They realize they can't do nothing. That frustration is hurting this country.
There was a meeting of former prime ministers at the Bliss Institute a couple of years ago. Do you remember that?
That's right.
Where it was Dean Barrow, Said Musa, Esquivel, and what I remember taking away from that was Dean Barrow standing up and saying, you know what, the patronage system is here to stay. That is a natural part of government. You can't think that going anywhere. And I was like, whoa, he was the current prime minister then. And he's saying, what you expect? Because your people put you in, they expect to be rewarded. But I don't know if I didn't agree with it then, I don't agree with it now.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I spoke against it because what he said, there was a guy they used to get this paper from the Caribbean, from a newspaper. There was a very good writer. We all used to get it and we read it because they keep informed about what is happening in the Caribbean. This guy wrote this article about the spoil system. And he wrote it to suggest that it's a system that will be with us forever. Barrow, at that same meeting, said that he agreed with the guy with the spoil system. It's just like what you are saying. That's exactly what he did with you. It's just I'm telling you that with the spoil system, but the same thing as you said. He saying
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Him think that this, he said the winner must take out.
Take it out. Yeah, yeah.
And then he got on to clarify it. He said, no, he said, what you have to do there is, he said, but then with this, you have to reward the friends.
Correct.
He said, the only thing we don't want to do, we don't want to punish your enemy.
Which is a lie.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
as long as you're rewarding your friends, you're punishing your enemy. That's the other side. But we have to understand something in human nature and human culture. There'll always be some level of corruption in everything human. It is just natural. It is just natural. What we need to try and do is to keep that corruption to a minimum, and to make it transparent, and to hold people accountable at all levels. That's what I believe.
That obviously is what we should be looking at in the Constitution. What loopholes exist that allow these improprieties to occur, and just the people get away with it. Like I'm saying, a minister could do something even if they're by mistake, and say make a mistake, but it has cost the people X amount of dollars. He should have some part of that liability, man. You make this mistake. How are we gonna stop them from doing it, or even have them think twice the next time if they know that there's no price to pay on their part? I mean, hit them where it hurts in the pocketbook.
But again, Mr. Chairman, look at this. What Mr. Morrison said about the innate weaknesses of the human person. It's a fact. But the consciousness of that is what brings in internal controls. Whenever you are going to employ somebody, let's take the private sector, but the same thing in the public sector, when you go to vote. You will do the interview. The group who will do the interview come to the decision that Mr. A should get the job because he feels that he's an honest man. He believes that he's technically competent, so he gives the job to him. In management, in leadership, you cannot straitjacket because it's counterproductive. But what you do, you have international standards for internal control. You put those internal control in place that if he snap, you pick it up early and you address it. That is how you deal with the human weakness. The problem with Belize, again, we have the internal controls. We have the finance orders, we have the store orders, we have the finance and farm up. By the way, I will add this. There is a talk that no, they will make a move, but this is not from the government, this is from outside, to set up an autonomous audit department. So, to put it, the laws are there to keep you in check, but if you don't apply it again, it's a question of non-compliance. The finance audit is there. All of them are there, but they are not being complied with.
I've been trying to set a lead time aside every morning to do some reading, and I run out a book, and I say, you know what? Here we are to read this Constitution word for word. And I've been doing that, and I think everybody ought to do it, because I'm looking in there, like you're saying, Joe, for something that's out of place, something that is not going to help with this, how you call it, shared prosperity, better standard of living for people. And so far, I've gone through a lot of it, and I see some of the things that I had missed before. But I think we have to study the Constitution, look at it. Maybe we can do that here. Set only 5-10 minutes aside in every show and read something from the Constitution. Look at it. There are different chapters and different matters like finance and citizenship and the government, the three arms of government and whatnot. So it basically covers more than we know. And maybe even more than it has to, but I do not think that it has left out a whole lot of stuff. So
you are absolutely right, Mr. Chairman. And you know why you are right? We did not invent this Constitution.
Right.
We didn't. This constitution came
inherited it.
from the hundreds of constitutions that were done before.
Right.
When Courtney
Exactly.
and Rogers and Assad and them had the surprise had commanded them to do the search, and they gone through it and look at the one constitution in the world.
Cut and paste. Cut and paste.
That's right. So when it happened, we may make a constitution from those who had gone before and made the errors, so we don't have to make things. So
Tried and tested. Tried and
when that
tested.
constitution was finished, that constitution could have bring us everything that we wanted from independence. It's just that we didn't apply it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the weakness is not our constitution. We have tampered with it in our legislature to weaken it and destroy it to some degree. But I think the document we had initially gave us some good protections.
But that's the same document that we still have, Greg. We
Well,
can't,
no,
they
but-
can't,
but- well,
they
they
can't
went
tamper
and-
with it. They can't water it down because nothing has been changed in it.
no, they have made amendments that have lessened some. of
Well,
the-
they have made a couple of amendments.
but that's fine. There's one that I was listening about that was, I think, clause 69 that sort of changed some of the rights and allowed them to make changes to the constitution. And once it was made under some conditions and carried out, then it destroys some of the basic fundamental principles and rights of the constitution that was set out before. So I don't know how true that is, and I think
But-
probably
but-
something like that needs to be tested.
Here's the
court.
thing, though, Gregory, because time moves on, and it is said that the Constitution is a living document.
Oh, of course.
And that
I have
you
no
can't-
problem with
Amendments
reforms.
every now and again
making-
as
making-
the need arises. Once it is put transparently, like you said, before the people, and
Yes.
everybody sees the common sense of it, I
Yes.
don't see a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is non-compliance with the laws as they are written there. If you want to change it, fine. Tell me why you want to change it. Tell me when they're wrong, we're not right. But then, until that such time, that is the law, and you must comply with the law. And they're not doing that. That's the problem. And I want, before we go on, when switch gears here and talk and leave it to American politics in America, I said Giuliani got booked. No, I want to say thanks to all the people who supported me. Last week was an amazing game. We had a big game in the thing. Our event went quite well. We had bags were given out to the kids. A lot. We had a team. Couple of teams came in. In fact, a Spanish team, and I really like to see that because I like to see the different ethnicities in at the park with no problem. The other day I was passing by and I see a little old China fellow pushing a little China kid on the swing. And I mean, that right there touched me. And I said, this is where we look for. Nobody to bother on, nobody tell her nothing. You're in the park. It's a space, safe space, and a spot for people to come and enjoy themselves. So it is working. Our next thing will be our Ghetto Expo, which we do the Thursday before every big expo, where we have people come out and sell these things, where we try to already got some stuff in from some friends in the US too, and we make it available cheap to them, and some of the stuff are really good stuff. But we want we're hoping for a big event this year again. It was successful last year, but I just wanted to put that in. Now, Giuliani got summoned. Did Trump appear in court yet? Did he go? I suppose he was supposed to get $200,000 bail. What happened there?
I think he's going tomorrow, Thursday.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's going tomorrow.
So
Yeah.
what do you think, Gregory? Is this going to affect this guy or not? Or his popularity just seems to be zooming?
Well, they said he might make a campaign poster of his booking photo. So,
and he keeps harping on this witch hunt to the point where people are now looking at it and asking themselves, could it maybe be a witch hunt? I imagine that the same thing, Joe, the point you were making with Shine and the tampering with the Constitution to retroactively make him suffer for the crimes of his past. Um, I is it is there any aspect of a witch hunt involved in this? Are they going after Trump unfairly, or is it something that should be done?
From what I have read, and I believe I have spent a lot of hours, I don't know, I followed it because I was concerned about how democracy in America will survive, where I think Trump succeeded in bringing out a dark side of America that was always there. And it has to do with white supremacy. It has to do with other rebellious type of people in America. It has to do with the non-college educated whites. And Trump created a cult movement. He did. I think he was able to take the fear of those people that they had, believing that their rights were being taken away. And Trump succeeded in getting the people to trust him. So I think his situation now is about trust. Trump can lie all he wants, but once he has the trust of those people, they will go with him.
Tell me something,
I have
though.
read all the 91 felonies they bring in against him,
Mm.
and I cannot understand how he will ever be able to get acquitted on all those.
Yeah.
Tell me something. In all fairness, and I'm not a Trump supporter, right? Let me make that clear. But is it that white supremacists are attracted to him? Supremacists are attracted to him for a specific reason, and it's more than what he's saying, but what they are interpreting. Is it that they're looking to him as some sort of white savior? It because I've listened to his rhetoric, I've listened to his speeches and whatnot, and except for the part when in the there's something said when he said they're good people on both sides, and obviously most of the people on that other side weren't looking for any good purpose there. But is it really is it that he is trying to reach out to these people, or are these people just supporting him because it's the closest they have to what they want?
I believe there are a lot of people in this country that are disillusioned. Lots of white people, young people, older people, that have not been able to get the advantage of this country as they were promised and what they feel somewhat entitled to. And when they sit around or are here doing the best they can with whatever they have, and they see people from other countries come in, the Hispanic, the the Indians,
The Belizeans.
Belizeans, just people from other places come in and are able to carve out some success in this country, and they feel because of their being here, being white, that they are not moving forward. They become very agitated. And this is not the first time uh, uh, that these people are acting like this. There was, if we look back, there was a campaign back, I think it was like in 76 when Jesse Jackson ran, and he was able to capture a black man. He was able to capture a significant, I can't remember what percentage it was, but a significant percentage of poor white people to vote for him, because he had campaigned on a policy of lifting up and helping poor people. And that appeal had crossed to some degree the color boundary, and he was able to attract them. Even Obama, when he ran, he was able to capture a significant amount of white people. But later on, they became disenchanted because Obama didn't follow his policy. Jackson didn't win. And so these people then wrapped their hopes on Trump. But Trump leaned into it and kind of fostered that kind of racism. And I don't know that he always had that particular, maybe he always had that kind of behavior and character. But I think most people that knew him early on did not see that sort of blatant racism that he seemed to be just outwardly showcasing these days.
How do you how do you then explain the many black people who also support Trump?
And that's part of it. Trump speaks to us in a way, because there are some policies that Trump advocate for that as a person, and I don't think it has anything to do with my race, um, could support and ask questions. For example, I don't think if when we look at like the policies of the Democrats and Biden, and it seems to them that we always have to be at war with somebody. We have to make an enemy of someone. And why not Russia? Why not China? When President Trump or former President Trump says that we could work with these people. We could make we They don't have to be our natural enemy. We don't have to start building arms and all this kind of stuff just to create an enemy. I sort of lock into that and buys into that and had hoped that something like that could have worked out for him. He went far to the right and disturb and didn't follow through with any of those kind of policies, sane policies.
Of
But I
course, of course, we understand that any president is only one man, and that yeah, he has all the plans and everything else, but he's working within the framework of a whole system. That if he's not careful and if he goes against it too far, we've seen what happened to John F. Kennedy and a number of other U.S. presidents. So that the one thin line they have to be walking most of the time. I'm wondering if indeed it was Trump really is the rhetoric was really that far right, or is it that the far right latched onto that, interpreted it for what they wanted, and then they became him as opposed to him becoming them. You see the point I'm trying to make here.
I see exactly what you're saying, and that was my point. I believe that at some point, um, he saw them as a solid, reliable, stick with me no matter what happens or what I say or what I do, and they just became entangled. But I don't believe that at the outset he was exactly the creature he is or we have seen in creation, for as far as the racism and language and behavior in that regard.
So
I,
maybe
I
he's become that more from the perception that people have of him as opposed to what he actually is
I
can be.
I differ with you on that strongly.
Okay.
I feel like in trying to understand Trump, you have to know of the history of Trump. Trump is a racist. Trump used to, he was big, it's the real estate business that brought him to where he's supposed to be this millionaire, as he say. Trump used to refuse to have black people rent his apartments. He did, blatantly. He was taken to court for it, and he lost. Trump took advantage of immigrants that were in America illegally. Polish immigrants, get an agent set up to work them, pay them little. When they complain, he threatened that he'll report them. No, if you look at the statistics of the far right of the Republican Party, the majority of the Republican Party right now is supporting Trump. Do you agree with that? That's the statistics that come out of the polling.
Apparently, yeah.
No, the far right of the Republican Party has always been the extremist white supremacist type of people, highly conservative. The blacks that you're seeing there are in small numbers. Now, when Trump can say that he has massive evidence, I'm using the very words he's saying, and conclusive evidence to prove that the election was stolen, that it is fraud. And he keeps saying he has gone to courts and he lost every case. Not one case did he win. But he continues to be lying. Then he seeks defense under the First Amendment that he has the right to free speech. As the experts are saying, you have the right to free speech. You have the right to lie, but you don't have the right to try to subvert the system.
Tell me,
when you look at the character of Trump, I don't see anything really about him wanting to look across the spectrum and help everybody. Trump is just self-centered and selfish and greedy.
when you let me segue here a bit.
But sorry to, I just want
No. When you mention about right and extreme right and far right, don't you think that that's a misnomer and maybe it's time we stop? Because right is right and wrong is wrong. And when we put them in that right, they are right, when in fact they're not right. They're more wrong than right. So maybe they should, instead of the left, and I don't know how the left then let them get away with it, or the moderate, how they allow them to get away with using right to describe what they are.
Yeah, because right and left is not in the sense of what is right and wrong.
Yeah, but still,
the right and left is what you call
Political.
So you're misinterpreting, you're reinterpreting, you're putting right in another context as opposed to what it really is.
Extreme conservative.
Correct.
Yeah.
And can you do that? I mean, should you do that when in fact it's implying, when the average person here, or the right and the left, where do you want to go? You want to be right.
No, what happened? What happened, Mr. Chairman? Look at the political spectrum.
I know, but
are spectrum has.
Are you getting the point I'm trying to make?
I get your point, but I'm trying to tell you that on the political spectrum, you have far right, you have far left.
I know, but you're explaining something that I know. That is not the
center.
point.
No, the point I'm making to you that when you're on the extreme right, you want almost no regulation. You want small government. You want low taxes. That is on the far right.
And is that right? Joe, what I'm saying here, I understand what all that is. I understand what it is and how it's interpreted there. I'm saying maybe right is not the right word to be using for that. You go north and south if you want. You know what I mean?
No, but I'm saying that is what is internationally accepted in the in political science.
And that again is not what I am contesting, whether it's accepted or not.
What is it that you are contesting?
I am saying that it should not be used, the word should not be used in that context, because right is right. I mean, you're saying this is right as opposed to the left, and then in fact the extreme right, you kind of like you imply that something about that is okay, is right.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
We could call it extreme conservatism or something.
Well, okay, let's do that. Let's do that.
You could call it conservatism, you could call it liberalism.
But why don't we?
No matter what you want to call it, as long as we agree on what it is. Yeah. So to me, I wouldn't dispute. I wouldn't try to argue about whether we call it right or left or center or moderate.
That's how they understood it.
That's how they understand it. That's how they talk in natural.
There's something about it, though. I'm just thinking that it really. I don't know how we've gotten along with it so far. How we accepted it so far.
Because it's understood to be what it is.
Which is right. Correct? Because right is what right is. We understand what right is, don't we? Yeah. And we understand what they are when they get to, in particular, that extreme part. And that's not right. So that's all I'm saying. I mean, listen, when they change it because of me. And I don't know if it's ever been thought about in that way. But listen, I'm just saying that's an opinion of mine. Just musing. Pay me no mind. I'm just throwing that out there.
All right, let me continue then. Trump represents the ultra-conservative. We will leave the far right and we will call it ultra-conservative, if that more pleasant to the ears. I'm saying to you, that's what he has represented all his life, the ultra-conservative. So, the ultra-conservative evidently will support Trump. But I'm saying that when a former president and a man now who is in the front line running in his party for president, way ahead of the rest, continues to be making these statements that he has massive evidence, conclusive evidence that there was fraud. And yet for a man saying this, and he been to court so many times and have never won a case, something is seriously wrong with him.
But more than that, he's on the news more than anybody. He's
Of course,
probably interviewed more than anybody.
That's
Why
right.
doesn't anybody say to him, like you would, Joe? You got opinion, you think you lost, you got facts, you say you got facts, show me the facts. Where is it? What is it? Because apparently everywhere that he contested it and went to, they are now suing him, bringing him on charges because of the fact that they believe they have more evidence than he does. But he continues to say, oh, the election was stolen. I have evidence that it was. Where is the evidence? And is nobody bright enough to even ask him to show me one?
The point I'm making, Mr. Chairman, he went to court several times. Several times. Either Trump himself or on behalf of Trump. And he lost every case. Giuliani, the same thing. Now Giuliani is saying now that he's about to be booked or has been booked. He say he has. Now they have scientific evidence. He called it scientific evidence. And he will be able to prove that the election was a fraud.
Well,
What I'm saying here is this. You are dealing with a mind like Trump and Giuliani and that crowd. That they are very dangerous people. They are serious.
but let me ask you this though. Are they taking him to court because of the fact for him to prove that he has it, or just because he was involved in some skullduggery that question or try to undermine the election?
They're
Because
taking him to court for undermining the election,
Right,
Not,
so-
not to prove.
so they're
anything.
not apparently they're not even concerned in whether he has evidence or not. So that may play one.
That's already ruled that
That's
he
already
lost the
ruled?
election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I say, he went to court. He lost the cases. But he persisted. And now, in Georgia, it's about the subversion of the system, the
And-
voting system.
And what I always so want
In
to say is that
Washington, it's about the declassified documents. And then the third one is about how he participated in the insurrection. And the fourth one is with the girl, with the Sami girl, you know that sex matter.
yeah.
So those are the four. But out of them, they come 91 felony charges.
Hmm.
And he has not been able, he went to court several, he lost every case.
Mhm. Greg, you were saying something.
No, it's okay.
All right. Listen, we're almost out of time. And any topic that we should have brushed on that we didn't? I mean, the fire in Mao. I see Biden went up there to take a tour. I must say, he doesn't look all that well in his movements. I hope he's well, not trip over an next sandbag or nothing like that. No, because I don't think he'd take one next fall in the condition he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the leader of the free world, so
Yeah.
you have to give him propers for that, no? And apparently, he also has his share of supporters. I don't know that if the and again we get that he not done nothing wrong, but given circumstances, I don't know if the Democratic Party would not be better served with a more vibrant candidate. And I think a lot of people are I don't think I'm alone in thinking that. But where are they coming from?
That's the question. That's the
You see?
question. Where is that person? That person is
The,
not on the horizon, right?
The one where I think would have been able to do it for them, I mean, Cormo from New York, but of course he get in that trouble by liking women, which is an
Yeah.
interesting thing because that can bring you down quicker than anything. Only man in not touch that Trump, who just said some very vulgar things, and has been proven
Yeah.
in relationships with improper, if you will, with several females, been married 3 or 4 or 5 times, and the American people don't seem to mind with Trump.
Exactly. There goes my statistics, what I was
Yeah,
telling you
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah,
If he could have done-
there's some
if he could have
hypocrisy at
done-
play.
If he could have done all these things, outrageous things, and still hold a high percentage of the ultra-conservative movement, something is seriously wrong with those people. And that's
They're not thinking. They're not thinking.
That's the point. But there is something that at least
Well,
had drew my attention over the last week or two, and it had to do with the climate change. For example, it's for 84 years since a hurricane ever threatened California. The waters are they went up 2 to 3 degrees in Celsius in the Caribbean. The storms are getting more intense. More storms are coming.
Really?
I am watching the changes that are beginning to happen in Canada, in the US.
Yeah, with the fires and whatnot you talk about.
Yeah.
84 years ago, when that hurricane was going to Southern California, which you say it's been 84 years, right?
Yeah, I think 1939.
Was that a sign then of those times? I mean, why would the fact that it happened before and it just happened that there's a long time in between, I don't know. Does that signal anything that's out of order? The climate has changed since the beginning of time. We had an ice age, for Christ's sake. We had different ages.
And we had a fireball before.
You see, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Listen, I think what we need to pay more attention to is our own morality, our own individual way of thinking, and the things we do. Are we moving too far away from critical thinking and ethical thinking? Are we really getting all of us too corrupt within our way of thinking and movements? Are some of the things that we are endorsing maybe not correct? We look upon it, but again, go back to this Buddha thing, Nakayo, and there will be those who will stand up in defense of this fellow. Maybe we need to start condemning more what is wrong and start promoting more what is right.
Well, a friend told me in California, LA, about this storm. He said, Joe boy, I'm going for higher ground. I tell him, see if you can reach Mount Sinai. That's pretty high. I say, and when you get there, ask them to give you another set of the commandments because this one isn't working. Gentlemen, critical thinking is lacking in this country, and we are lost the moral ground. Not morality equated to religion. No, we don't have to be.
Right.
The simple is
common sense.
Right. When we can do some of the things we are doing today,
Decency, common decency.
That's right. It's when you go around and you're doing business, and we do a lot. It's difficult to find one honest professional person. When we hear the emphasized politicians in accounting, in law, in medicine, the amount of people in surveying. Look what that guy did just the other day. 30,000. He gone with some poor people with.
But you
So
know,
I'm saying there was a time when professionals in this country, even though without having the degrees, what we call them professionals, the tailor, the cabinet maker, they never used to steal it.
but that kind of behavior was condemned. Now it is
Accepted.
justified and excused away and explained away. That is the problem we have now. I
So it's the
sincerely
moral
believe.
ground. We have lost the
Yes,
moral ground.
we have lost. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure again. Please, we look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place, right here on Belize Sticks Recordings. We do it on Facebook, 7 o'clock Belize time, 6 o'clock LA time. Am I correct, Greg?
Yes, sir.
And 9 o'clock New York time. CY, we're out of here.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Run the clip. Run the track, CY. Run the track. Oh, yeah.
I know we could do better.
Exactly.
Fall victory, walk away from trouble. That is a victory. Cease fire, who no picnic. Put down the guns and land on the ABC. What's
What?
going on?
All right.
You just pull that trigger.
another
Yeah, right.
Bop, 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 bop. Another shot post, another youth murder. Bop, 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 bop. Tears running from the eyes of another mother. No bad man there. No bad man there. No bad man. No bad man there. You will get burned when you mess with fire. No bad man there. No bad man. No bad man there. No bad man. No bad man there. Be a leader, not a follower. My opinions, our generation mess up the young kids them. They don't have no respect. Mommy and daddy store with the bell from them. No listen, learn them all. Sell out them goddamn friends. And anything that is in trend, they will follow that right up to the end. It gets worse when them take God. Hey, out of the school. And all them politicians think they could take every fool. Life means nothing to others now. Human just cruel. And everybody in power. Hey, take poor people from you. Your time is ticking. Tick, 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 tick. Like a time bomb. Tick, 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 tick. One day I mess with the wrong one. Then tick, 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 tick. Put down the guns. Then no tick, 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 tick. What's going on? You just pull that trigger. What's going on?
My sound, run the dance hall, run the dance movement, make it gal ball, run the dance hall. Sound system on the brawl, running the dance hall, run the dance hall, run the dance. I like ladies with the big bush. When I'm not feeling right, I smoke bush. The other day, me and my boy did the jokes. When police came, had to hide in the bush. Now my baby time, cause she always say push. Get me to the point, I'm inside like